Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, you guys have questions, we have answers. That's what's on tap, so make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network. Locked On, your team every day. This is the daily podcast covering the Los Angeles Dodgers, bringing you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue. I'm Samperio, Chavez Ring Fiends, here together with Jeff Snider of Baseball Essential. Jeff, I know it's a rare occasion. I say it every week, but I'm glad to be on here with you for today.
Yeah, it's definitely nice to talk to somebody else other than just myself. By my count, this is the 874th podcast that we've done together. Obviously some just one or the other and some split, but between our two podcasts, this is number 874.
We are up there and only continuing to go. On today's episode, we put out a call for questions. You guys provided some questions, and we are going to do our best to provide some answers. But before that, I just want to thank you and remind you to make Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. We are found wherever you can get podcasts and on YouTube. And yeah, Jeff, no news in the baseball world, no lockout news other than the fact that the player side is supposed to put their proposal, and they're supposed to talk, I think, this week, Friday maybe. They seem to be moving very slow, I will say. It's January 19th, and they've met pretty much like 3 times since the lockout started. We're like day 47 or 48, and it doesn't seem to have – they don't seem to have too much urgency right now.
Yeah, I think it's going to – come down to once it actually starts threatening to hit them in the wallet. When we get to mid-February, when spring training is supposed to be starting, they're going to start thinking, maybe we need to start thinking about this. And then when we get to the beginning of March, when it's like, okay, if we don't figure something out like in the next couple of days, we're actually going to have to change the regular season schedule and maybe lose some games and therefore lose some money. That's when the urgency will come. It's definitely frustrating that doing what's best for the sport doesn't provide enough urgency, but that's how negotiations go. And I'm not too stressed about it right now, but it definitely would be nice if there was more going on in terms of progress.
Yeah, I'm hoping that this counter proposal kind of kickstarts actual negotiations. Like, okay, you're opening salvo, your counter salvo, and now we can actually talk and actually try to work things out. I'm hoping that's what happens, but that'll remain to be seen. But either way, we're still here. We're not on lockout. We're locked on, and we got some questions from you guys. And yeah, Jeff, let's just hop right into them. The first one is for you, so I'll let you handle this one. It's from Joe Hole, our buddy. He says, what changes would hashtag Jeff for Commissioner like to see approved on new CBA? I know we're going to talk about this probably in depth at some point, and kind of back and forth between us. So maybe give us top 3 things you want to see.
Yeah, and maybe not even quite that, because like you said, we are going to spend several episodes probably talking about some of the specifics we want to see. And so I'm just going to kind of summarize it with what I want to see is both sides willing to compromise. And nobody ever likes that idea because obviously, by definition, everybody thinks that their side is right. And whichever side of this dispute you side with as a fan, you might be thinking, well, they shouldn't have to compromise. It should be the other side that has to compromise. But the way negotiations go is you do need to compromise. And I think there's probably an issue of the players feel like they didn't get much of anything that they wanted the last couple rounds of negotiations. And so they want to maybe make up for lost time with this one. And then on the flip side, the owners feel like, well, we got everything we wanted, or everything we pushed hard for the last couple times. So now it's time to push hard for more things. And I think what needs to happen is they need to find some sort of common ground that they say a good negotiation is when neither side is happy at the end. And I think there's a lot of truth in that, and they need to identify those things. And like you said, making progress with some common ground would be really important. And there are some things like our next question that we're going to talk about is about the DH in the National League. That is something that they should agree on publicly and exuberantly right now. You know what? Both sides want the DH in the National League, so there's an agreement, and that gives you some momentum. But the problem is both sides see that as, well, I know the other side wants it, so I'm going to use that as a bargaining chip, which is how you end up with a season like 2021 where both sides wanted the DH. The DH made a ton of sense after coming off of a shortened season, and yet we didn't have it because both sides knew the other side wanted it. And so it's like, I don't want to play with this toy, but I know that you want it, so I'm not going to let you have it. And when the best metaphors for something are how children play with toys together, maybe that's a sign that the grown-ups in the room are struggling a little bit.
Yeah, it's been, there's we haven't really got to the point where both sides are posturing and basically propaganda online. We haven't got to that point yet. We are probably going to get there here in the next few weeks as they negotiate a little further. It was interesting to see. I don't know if you saw the stuff with John Boy on Twitter recently where he kind of got ganged on because he kind of blamed the way they worded the tweet. It put blame on the players, and then even though if you watch the video, that's not what they were saying, but the tweet was very poorly worded, and then he didn't realize. I think he let his ego get in the way, and people that were dunking on him, and he got it in the way. But at the end of the day, it's the players want to play, the owners want to make money. So there's two different things, at hand. Obviously, the players want to make money too. But at the end of the day, this is a player's job. They want to play baseball. The owners, for the most part, they have other stuff going on. They're still going to make money outside of this. So that's where the urgency, that's where, the players have given in recent years. And that's kind of where now they want to fight back. And it's just, how much are they willing to actually stand and fight and for what they want? And I think that's where we're going to really find out. Because it's like you said, from what we've seen every time, the players end up caving in a little bit more. And I don't know if this is the time where they don't do that or they do that. I don't know how strong they're going to be or how united they're going to be on that front.
Yeah, it's hard to tell. And that's the part that's scary because, I used to kind of believe, okay, it's in everybody's best interest to get this figured out so that we can have a full season and everything. But seeing how many things that were in everybody's best interest that didn't happen, it makes me think that just being in everybody's best interest isn't enough. As for the John Boy stuff, it's like this, like everything else in our culture right now, is so polarized that if you say anything positive about one side, it is interpreted as you are 100% on that side and 100% against the other side. We see it in politics all the time. If you praise something that a Democrat did, everybody assumes you are as far left as it can possibly be on the political spectrum. If you praise something a Republican did, people assume you're as far right as you can be, when the fact is that most of us are, somewhere between middle left and middle right. And, there's actually a lot more in common than we would like to admit. And, logical thinking adults can recognize, oh, here's a guy who I don't actually normally agree with, but he did something good, or he said something I agree with, and you should be able to agree with those things. And so, whether you agree with John Boy's point or not about the players, things need to be taken at face value and recognize, okay, if they said one thing about the players, then take it as that one thing and don't just assume that you know everything about what's in everybody's head just based on one thing they said.
Yeah, he just has to talk to his social media guy and tell him to word things better. That was really what it came down to. But either way, there's a lot to go on. Like you said, our next question is going to be about the DH. But before you get to that question, let's talk about Built Bar. Built Bar is the best tasting protein bar. It's a protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, maybe even better than some candy bars. I mean, I would definitely pick a Built Bar over some candy bars that are out there. And guess what? Not only are you picking it because it tastes better, but you're picking it because it is better for you. Most Built Bars are around 130 calories, 4 grams sugar, 4 grams net carbs, around 17 grams of protein. Also got high fiber in there to help you out with, digestion. So I don't know. I don't see a reason why you haven't tried Built Bar yet, other than, you don't like to do things that are good for you, and you don't like to eat things that are good for you, or maybe you just don't like chocolate. That would be the only, I guess, real reason for you not to try Built Bar. But either way, Built Bar, a bunch of flavors, good for you. Always coming out with new flavors. They're really the bee's knees when it comes to protein bars. And right now you can get 15% off your order if you go to built.com and use the promo code LOCK15. That's LOCK15 at built.com for 15% off your order. Go get some Built Bars. All right, Jeff. I know we usually switch off questions, but I'll take this question just because I'm hosting and my turn to talk. And this one comes from Tim at bad_sext, SECTS. If there is a DH in the NL next year, what does the Dodgers infield look like?
You were so concerned about pronouncing his @ correctly that you missed. There's actually 2 or 3 underscores there in that username.
If you have more than one, I'm not going
to. That's his own problem. Yeah.
Yeah, that's your fault.
Sorry, Tim. But hopefully people will find you if they really want to find you. But yeah, what does Dodgers infield look like if there's a DH? I assume the Dodgers are going into this offseason planning on there being a DH because that is the most likely solution. And whether there's a DH or not, I think the Dodgers, if there's a DH, I think the Dodgers are going to use it as a way to get days off for a lot of people. That's kind of what Chris Taylor does for you, because when you think about it, you already have an infield of Muncy at first, Lux at second, Trey Turner at short, Justin Turner at third, and then an outfield of Pollock, Bellinger, and Mookie, and then you have Chris Taylor. And so you have your obviously then your catcher Will Smith. So you have your 9 batters ready, and it's just a question of who's playing where, and that's where having Trey Turner can play. They might even experiment with Trey Turner in the outfield again if they feel like they need to. But we know Chris Taylor can play everywhere. Gavin Lux has played a lot of places. Max Muncy can play 3 positions. So I think the infield on any given day could look a lot of different ways. Mookie Betts can play second base even. But I think the bigger question on the universal DH isn't so much what the infield looks like, but what's the starting 9. And I think that as of right now, the Dodgers have, a good solid starting 9. I still think they're going to maybe make some splashes in free agency and or trades. And so it probably will look different by opening day than it does right now. But you could do a lot worse than Muncy, Lux, Turner, Pollock, Bellinger, Mookie, Smith, and Taylor, because that is a solid up and down the lineup 9 guys who are all of them all-star potential at their peaks.
Yeah, like I said, I don't think it changes the infield too much, other than they acquire someone in a randomly, because they're not a lot of third baseman out there that are in free agency. So let's just say they made a trade for a third baseman and moved Turner to DH. That would be kind of the only difference. Obviously, if they signed Freddie Freeman, that would change the infield, but I feel like they'd be in on him with or without DH anyways, because Muncy could always move to second theoretically if they wanted to, or do a DH role. I do think the DH role, depending on how they want to handle it, could be, like I said, in that starting 9. Where is it at? Schwarber, Castellanos, there's a couple guys that are out there that could theoretically fill a role where it's more DH than defense. And like I said, wouldn't change the infield at all, but would change the dynamic of the starting 9. So, yeah, I do think offensively, this team isn't where it's going to be on opening day. And once the lockout ends, we can find out what exactly it will be.
And some of that also depends on what they do on the trade market, because if they trade, with the Reds for a pitcher, for example, there's a decent chance one of those 9 I listed is included. Most likely Gavin Lux, probably. He seems like the most likely to be trade bait, but it could be, it wouldn't shock me to see AJ Pollock traded. With his contract and his production, he's probably got quite a bit of value. So, obviously Mookie's not going anywhere. Bellinger's not going anywhere, and all that. But, the actual starting 9, I'd be shocked if it's the 9 names I listed. Not shocked. I'd be surprised if it's the 9 names I listed. But it's a good position to be in, that they could run out that lineup and be just fine.
Yeah, one note real quick that wasn't a question. I don't think you talked about it yesterday. You talked about Correa signing with Boris?
No.
Do you think that changes any plans of the Dodgers? I know that people seem to think that the Dodgers avoid Boris, but I think it's just a matter of the Dodgers are, always have different plans and always have backup plans when other teams overpay for players.
Yeah, and I've mentioned this before. That it's not that the Dodgers can't sign a Boris client. It's that the reason guys sign with Boris is that they want to get every dollar they could possibly get, and he's the best at doing that for them. And the Dodgers are often too smart and or pragmatic to go that big on a free agent. And so, uh, so it's not so much. I don't think the act of signing with Boris makes it less likely that Correa signs with the Dodgers. I think the fact that Correa decided to sign with Boris tells us some things about Correa that make it less likely for him to sign with the Dodgers, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, I mean, it makes sense. He could be one going from a best situation type deal to now I want the most money type deal.
Yeah, and it might just be, hey, look what he did for Marcus Semien and Corey Seager just last month. So what can he do for me? And they might, it doesn't change the baggage that Carlos Correa has, but it also doesn't change the fact that he is the best player on the free agent market. So, and he was even before Seager and Semien signed. So, it'll be interesting to see if Scott Boras can do a Boras magic on Carlos Correa's baggage.
Yeah.
Next question. This kind of going along with the infield from James Lenahan at Jimmy O. Lenny. Project the rotation at the start of the season and the end of the season.
Yeah, this is $1 million question because every year you could predict kind of easily the Dodgers at least, by spring training time. You can predict what the Dodgers starting rotation is going to be. You can never predict what it's going to be at the end of the season. So I'll say at the start of the season, it's Buehler, Julio, Kershaw, Heaney, and a free agent. I'll say that. I don't know specific or not free agent trade. But
somebody who's not currently on the team.
Yeah, someone not currently on the team. By the end of it, I do think it'll still be Buehler, Julio, Kershaw. I do think Pepio will step into whether it's a 6-man kind of rotation or a 5-man rotation. I do think he'll step in. And I think Heaney could, depending how he does, I think he'll kind of be in and out of rotation or maybe we can put in a different role. And I think they trade for somebody at the deadline, which you can almost say every year for the Dodgers because they have gotten almost a pitcher every time at the deadline. But it's not that bold of a prediction, but it's a prediction for now.
I don't know if you got a chance to listen to my episode yesterday or my part of the episode yesterday when I talked about Zach Greinke. What do you think about Zach Greinke as a potential free agent target?
Yeah, I talked about him a few weeks ago too, but just kind of on a bare bones surface stat wise, and it was exactly what you said. If you can get a guy that with the 4 ERA, and kind of when I said that the same day, if you can get a guy with the around a 4, even 4 or 5 ERA to give you 5-6 innings every 5th day, and he comes less than $10 to $12 million range, maybe what he gets paid. I 100% do that just because at this point, what happened last year. You guys got burnt out. There's no going around that. Buehler and Julio got burnt out. So you need somebody that's going to eat innings. You need a bullpen to stay fresh. You need a guy that, is not going to cost you much. If he gets hurt, he gets hurt. Kind of like a Rich Hill type, but Greinke's a little more durable than Rich Hill.
Yeah. And I guess what you're saying is you're better at listening to my parts of episodes than I am at listening to your parts of episodes. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens with Dustin May too when he comes back. If they even attempt to put him in the rotation at all in 2022, or if they just because he's probably going to be back, mid-season or even a little bit later, and they might just say, okay, you're a reliever. We're only going to throw you 20, 25 innings this season. So let's just go that route and then work him up in 2023. Or if they feel pressed for one reason or another to put him into the rotation.
Yeah, I feel Dustin May will give 2018 Julio vibes where he comes in late in the year and then can work his way onto the postseason roster.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Our last 2 questions after our next break will probably deal with some of those rotation questions too. So.
Yeah, definitely. But first, BetOnline. BetOnline, it's 2022 and BetOnline wants to wish you a happy new betting year as leagues continue their marches into the playoffs and beyond. But BetOnline remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering in 2022. They've got a new website that you can check out on your laptop or mobile device and sign up today. If you sign up today and use the promo code Locked On, you'll get a 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. So that's an extra 50% on top of your first deposit with the promo code Locked On when you sign up at BetOnline. From basketball, football, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for 2022. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, where the game starts. All right, so yeah, first question we'll get out of the way. We've answered variations of this question, but maybe people don't listen every day. So it comes from at @T_Money_Galan, and he asks, if Bauer is clear and never charged, should the Dodgers have him pitch this season if eligible?
Yeah, and there's a lot of ifs in there. I mean, there's only two ifs, but there's several other implied ifs. And yeah, if Bauer is declared eligible to pitch at the start of the season, the Dodgers kind of have no choice but to play him. Just the way the domestic violence policy is written, they're not allowed to punish him. And so if the league says there's no punishment for Bauer and the league doesn't relinquish that right of punishment to the Dodgers, yeah, they have no choice. I don't think that particular scenario is likely even a tiny bit. I think that it's basically a foregone conclusion that Bauer is going to miss some time in 2022 due to suspension. And the only real question is how much. And for me, the more intriguing question is, say he misses, they suspend him for the first 3 months of the season. Basically say you're suspended for a full season with credit for time served. And so he's back in June or whatever. And then obviously they'd send him out on a rehab assignment to get his legs under him and stuff. I think it would be interesting if he goes down to AAA and pitches there and doesn't pitch well. Well, then the Dodgers suddenly have a valid baseball reason to say, you know what, Bauer, we're going to cut you. And I would think there would at least be a temptation to jump all over that. Obviously it's a sensitive subject with fans. There's at least a vocal minority and maybe even a vocal slight majority of fans who never want to see Bauer in a Dodger uniform again. And I don't think ownership would totally ignore that. I definitely think there's also, some contingent of Dodgers players who, and probably more than a minority, probably a somewhat sizable majority of Dodger players who don't really want to be sharing a locker room with Trevor Bauer anymore. And if that's the case, I think ownership and the front office is definitely going to listen to that. And so it's going to come down to actually having a valid baseball reason to get rid of him. That's, I don't know if that's likely or not, but yeah. So my short answer to T-Money is that I don't think there's any chance that the scenario he lays out is going to happen. But I go back and forth on whether I think we'll ever see Bauer in a Dodger uniform again. And I think right now my best guess is no, but I'm not super confident in that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the legal things, that ramifications and everything else with this, but I mean, if 20 guys on a 26-man roster don't want to play with you, I would imagine the Dodgers could argue that's a baseball reason. And obviously it would go to a bunch of other, it would go on to a bunch of other stuff. But whatever the case is, it just remains to be seen. But yeah, I don't think that there's a way that Trevor Bauer is ready for opening day and not suspended at least a little bit. So
yeah, and since baseball contracts are guaranteed, they could also make the argument that it's not actually a punishment to be released, since you get your money anyway. If anything, it's we're helping you out. Here's all this money. You don't even have to work for it. Obviously, the Dodgers are hoping that some of that money comes off the books via suspension or whatever. So, actually, one other interesting thing, and this is totally off topic, but honestly, it's more fun to talk about than the other Bauer stuff. But we saw what happened with Marcell Ozuna, and how he got credit for time served. But when that happens, the option isn't just credit for time served. It's if you want to pay back the money you were paid during that time, then you get credit for time served. And so if MLB comes out and says, okay, Trevor, you're suspended for a year, do you want to go back to time served and be suspended until June, or do you want to sit out all of 2022? And if Bauer did choose, the thing that would make most sense for him would be to choose time served, because he made 40 million last year. He's making 45 million this year. And so every day of service time this year is worth more than last year. So it would make sense for him. It would say he'd make an extra $1 or $2 by doing the time served. Well, if he does time served, then that's suddenly $22 million or something that the Dodgers get paid back, which cuts back on their luxury tax bill, maybe drops them out of the third tier of the luxury tax and takes away the draft uh, repercussions of going over that second level of luxury tax. That's really interesting to me. Like, if they did that, would the Dodgers get retroactively relief on that luxury tax stuff? Because it seems like they should,
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, there's just a lot there that we don't know about, and we're not going to know about for a while. But moving on, staying with pitchers, Dane Dellenbach at K12PR Dane asks, when do we see Bobby Miller?
Dane is a friend of mine. He actually helped me coach our 11-year-old son's baseball team together. Dane's an Angel fan, but we won't hold that against him. But yeah, Bobby Miller, I think we're going to see him in 2022. The main question is in what role. And I think we're going to see Bobby Miller in the bullpen this year. Regardless of how well he does, I honestly think the bullpen is more likely for Pepio in 2022 also, unless they actually have a really big need in the rotation. I would expect both of them to come in and be, even if they are like that 2 or 3 inning type of relievers, like you mentioned about Dustin May, that Julio late season kind of thing, or just, Miller, I could see him just coming in and say, you know what, you're an 8th inning guy now. You throw 100 miles an hour, you wear your hat funny, you're going to be scary to people. You're our 8th inning guy, and throw him into that role. He seems like a guy who would kind of thrive under that sort of good pressure.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think we're going to see him this year. He looked great last year. He has the stuff. Obviously, he's getting stronger. He, will be in the system another year. Things are getting a little bit more back to normal, and I'm not barring, injury or some crazy fall from the stars for him this year. We're going to see him at some point. And I do think, like you said, a bullpen role would fit him well. Anytime you think of a young guy coming up in a bullpen role, you think, I think of Francisco Rodriguez back in 2002 with the Angels on that run and just kind of being a lights out dominant guy. Kind of what we thought about, Dustin May didn't quite work out. Buehler, they thought about that. 2017 didn't quite work out there, which maybe it should have, because Brandon McCarthy didn't do too great in his spots in the World Series. But either way, yeah, I definitely think we're going to see him this year, and I'm excited. This kid he just looks fun. Obviously, like I said, wears a hat a little different. He has that swagger, has that attitude, and hopefully that translates to him pitching well, and we can see it all unfold on Dodger Stadium this year.
Yeah, for sure. Do you know Francisco Rodriguez turned 40 a couple weeks ago?
I did not.
Time marches on, man. Time
Yeah.
marches on.
Yeah. Yeah, Jeff. So we have one more question.
That's right. We do.
Pulled up. Yeah.
Yeah. From Cheryl Ann Romano at Cheryl Romano 15. She asks, are the guys practicing playing ball at a school or recreation park? If not now, what will they do if spring training is delayed?
Yeah, everybody's different. Most guys at least at this point probably have a facility or some kind of training place that they work out at. There's guys that probably do go to the park maybe here and there. The guys that maybe live in more rural areas that don't have nice fancy facilities in their area. So yeah, they're working on wherever they can, wherever they can find. And if spring training is delayed, they'll continue to have to do that. And like I said, I'm sure if it gets to the point where negotiations are getting better, but they haven't quite done it yet, but you can have a sense that spring training is going to get underway. I would imagine some guys either go to Arizona or meet in Los Angeles and go to, start working out together at a facility or, something like that. So I would imagine that's kind of what's going on right now.
Yeah, I think so too. And I would guess that 98% of major leaguers have their former high school coach who would love to let them use any of their facilities that they have. Obviously, some high schools have better facilities than others, but I think every high school coach would definitely take the call from their big league former player and say, "Yeah, I'll have my catcher strap on the gear so you can come catch a bullpen session for you or whatever." I know Peyton Henry, who catches for the Marlins, he lives here in my town, and his dad is the high school coach here. And so, Peyton is all the time. My son sees him all the time when my son's there for freshman baseball practice. Peyton's always there, working on his own stuff, working with kids and stuff. And so there's plenty of stuff that these players can do. The resources they have available to them just by virtue of being major league players, that they're probably not hurting for facilities.
Yeah. Yeah, so that is all the questions, Jeff. Do you have anything else to add for today's episode?
Not that I can think of, other than I enjoy talking to you. So we should do this more often.
Yeah, it's a lot
Which I
easier.
say now, but it sure is nice not having to do an episode some days,
It's a lot easier to get to 30 minutes when you got somebody else to talk to.
Yep.
But yeah, that'll do it for today's episode. Thank you for all your questions. If you have more questions, feel free to submit them at any time. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. Make sure to tell your friends and family so they can make Locked On Dodgers their first listen of the day every day. But if you do have those questions or other comments, whatever you have, you can find us on social media. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. You can find Jeff on Twitter at Snider, and I'm at Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts. Feel free to reach out with whatever you need. We can also be reached via voicemail or text at 323-863-LOCK. That's 323-863-5625. Or via email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us when you get in your car or if you're at home. Tell your smart device, play podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.